Hi, VencoreWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Friday, September 29th. Cooler air moved into the mid-Atlantic region over the last 24 to 36 hours or so, and we'll actually have a reinforcing cold front pass through the region late tonight, and that'll usher in even cooler air for the weekend. High temperatures on Saturday and Sunday in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor should hold in the 60s. And overnight lows by early Sunday morning certainly should drop to the mid to upper 40s in many suburban locations here in the I-95 corridor. Comfortable conditions continue here in the early part of next week. It does look like it'll turn warmer again during the latter half of next week, but for the next several days, quite pleasantly cool conditions here in the Mid-Atlantic region. Meanwhile, as far as the tropical season is concerned, we're now heading into the latter stages of the Atlantic Basin tropical season. Typically, during the latter stages, homegrown tropical systems become more important than those African wave-type systems. During the first and middle part of the tropical season in the Atlantic Basin, typically we feature waves coming off the west coast of Africa, moving from the east to the west in the trade winds, and then closing in on the U.S. from the tropical Atlantic. During the latter stages, let's say late September, October, even into November, we often have to look to the Gulf of Mexico or the Caribbean Sea or the Western Atlantic right near the Bahamas, just to the east of Florida, for the formation of tropical systems. Indeed, it looks like over the next week to two, there very well could be multiple homegrown tropical systems that we'll have to monitor that could very well have an impact on Florida and the rest of the southeast U.S. This is the way the tropical picture looks right now. We have Tropical Storm Maria racing to the east now, and Lee moving to the northeast. Both of these systems heading into the North Atlantic, no longer an issue for the U.S. Meanwhile, we have a tropical wave down here between Cuba and southern Florida, right over the Keys. This could turn into a tropical storm over the next 48 to 72 hours or so. There is a chance that it intensifies enough that it actually gets a name, and that's if it reached tropical storm status. Even if it doesn't, it will dump some heavy rainfall on the Florida Keys and parts of the mainland of Florida, especially the southern half. It looks like it'll get together as kind of a low pressure area and then run into an atmospheric roadblock with very strong high pressure ridging setting up across the northeast U.S. over the next several days, and that could stunt the movement of this particular system and actually shove it to the west by the latter part of the weekend into the early part of next week. Another tropical wave here entering the Caribbean, and we'll certainly have to watch out for the potential for a system to form right around this region here, let's say around the 8th or 9th of October, and that very well could move into the southern Gulf of Mexico and then have an impact on Florida by about the 10th or so of October. So again, the area to look over the next 1 to 2 weeks, let's say, is this region right in here for the most part. This is, again, what I'm calling homegrown type tropical systems that form in the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean Sea, or the very western part of the Atlantic Ocean, as opposed to those African waves which take this long trek across the Atlantic Ocean. That kind of a wave, that type of tropical system diminishes as we reach the latter stages of the Atlantic Basin tropical season, and that is exactly where we are right now. So again, watching this region for potential development over the next couple of weeks. Well, one of the reasons there is some concern about potential tropical activity for the southeast U.S. over the next week to two, the fact that we have large-scale, high-pressure ridging setting up to the north, across the northeastern U.S., southeastern Canada, the Great Lakes. We've discussed this many times during the tropical season, that whenever there's very strong ridging, high-pressure ridging in the upper part of the atmosphere to the north, across New England, southeastern Canada, clockwise flow around that high pressure tends to aid in the movement towards the coast of tropical systems. And indeed, we'll walk through last night's European model run. These are 5-day averages for the 500 millibar height anomalies. Right here, days 1 to 5, the next 5 days. All this orange here in southeastern Canada, northeast U.S. represents anomalous high pressure ridging in the upper part of the atmosphere of 500 millibars. And if we just walk through this, days 2 to 6, days 3 to 7, days 4 to 8, 5 to 9, and finally days 6 to 10, taking us out to about the 10th of October. Very persistent pattern with high pressure ridging in the north, the northeast U.S., southeastern Canada. Again, this is conducive to some tropical activity down across the southeastern U.S. So we'll monitor that. Raises a red flag for the southeast U.S. during the next couple of weeks. Well, let's now switch models, go to the GFS. This is the 060 GFS. We're looking at the western Atlantic region, the Gulf of Mexico here, the Caribbean Sea. This is Cuba, and of course Florida right here. And we'll focus in on the tropical situation. Again, these homegrown tropical systems, again, from last night's GFS, will run along in 6-hour increments. And right off the bat, we see a wave of low pressure here over the Yucatan Peninsula. Now let's move ahead in 6-hour increments. And here we go. Here's one wave over the Yucatan Peninsula, and it's in the western part of the Caribbean Sea by the weekend. Let's keep moving forward again in 6-hour increments. Lots of rain over Florida over the next few days. Again, that's primarily from this tropical system right over southern Florida right now. It may or may not reach tropical storm status. Even if it does not reach tropical storm status, it'll dump a lot of heavy rain on parts of Florida. Let's keep moving forward here. And again, persistent low pressure down here across the Yucatan Peninsula. We're now into the early part of next week. And again, lots of rainfall. Notice the movement here from the east to the west as we progress along. And that's all thanks to that large high pressure ridging up to the north with the clockwise flow around it. Here's high pressure centered here. Clockwise flow around. It pushes moisture and systems in general from the east to the west, increasing the chances that the southeast U.S. has an impact here. Now let's move. We're now October 5th. Still very consistent green showing up in this part of the world here. Again, we're moving along in 6-hour increments. Now we're getting to the latter part of next week, and notice a pretty healthy looking system by this time of showing up on the maps here. This is now October 6th, and GFS by a week from now, the 6th or 7th of October, has one system here to the north of Cuba, another system here, Bay of Campeche area, just to the south and east of Yucatan. Excuse me, this is a southwestern Caribbean area. So again, in about a week, two different homegrown type tropical systems. Let's keep moving forward. This particular system is one of concern. It's been very consistent on the models. Again, can jump from the Caribbean into the southern Gulf of Mexico and then have an impact on Florida by around October 10th or so. Let's keep moving ahead. Here's October 8th. A strong looking tropical system enters the Gulf of Mexico, again using last night's GFS model, and then heads right towards the western side of Florida. This is now Monday, October 9th. So again, this is the area of concern. Let's keep moving forward here against this speculation stage at this time. 10 days out or so, October 10th time frame, potential tropical system of concern here around Florida. The point is, this is speculation at this point, but the atmosphere is sending many signals that homegrown type tropical systems will be of concern over the next 10 days to 14 days or so. And we are all the way out to October 12th. Tropical system sitting right over southern Florida. So we'll monitor this potential over the next several days. But again, focus in on the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean Sea, the very western part of the Atlantic over the Bahama Islands for the potential for tropical system formation over the next week to 2 weeks. And it very likely can be a system that pulls out of the Caribbean Sea into the Gulf of Mexico and has an impact on Florida in the medium term, let's say around October 10th. And in the short term, there'll be a tropical wave impacting Florida with some heavy rainfall over the next 48 to 72 hours or so. So that's it for now. Still, tropical season of concern I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian for Vencore Weather.